Hello and welcome back to another edition of Snakes Territory. I'm Jesse Friedman. That is Jack Sommers. And Jack, we are here once again talking about a Diamondbacks win as they find a way to win 2 out of 3 at Citi Field against what was a very hot Mets team coming into this series. Diamondbacks take the finale by a final score of 4-2. And Jack, where I want to start on this one is the fact that Zac Gallen has a 0.75 ERA this season in the state of New York and a 6.84 ERA everywhere else. So, Jack, what do you make of that?
Jesse, dropping the big one. I love it. That is fantastic. I mean, uh, doing it on the big stage, going on the road to New York against two of the best teams in the league. It's certainly extremely encouraging to see Zach pitch this way today.
Yeah, and this was not, it's not like Zach struck out 13 like he did against the Yankees toward the beginning of the season, but this was not an outing like we had with Corbin Burns, I guess you could compare it to from the day before. Both guys went 6 innings and gave up 1 run, but I think we're on the same page here that Zac Gallen's outing today felt a whole lot different. He allowed only 2 hits. He did have 3 walks, but he didn't really allow those walks to hurt him at all. He gave up a solo home run to Juan Soto, as did Kevin Ginkel later in the game. Those are the only Mets runs that scored throughout this one. But all the way around, Jack, it wasn't just that the final line looked good. It was that Zach on the mound, just the eye test looked really good for him as well throughout this start.
Absolutely. I mean, other than the Soto home run and a couple other balls, wasn't very much hard contact against him. And, he had a 22 pitch first inning, and you thought, oh boy, I hope we don't go through that again. But he immediately locked in after that. He did gave up a hit, and all three of his walks came with 2 outs. So that was kind of drove up his pitch count a little bit, kind of kept him from going 7 innings. But he looked in control. He looked in command. He was getting swing and miss and really pretty much dominating almost the entire outing. This was, other than that one start against the Yankees, this is as good as we've seen him look all year long. The eye
Offensive.
test, the stat line.
100%, 100%. I believe he had 12 whiffs in this game, which again, compared to the 24 that he had against the Yankees, this probably wasn't the most electric that we've seen Zac Gallen this season. It's going to be hard to ever top that start in the Bronx, but still really, really positive signs there across the board. Offensively, Jack, the Diamondbacks did enough. This wasn't a great game necessarily. They had a pretty good number of base runners. They had 9 hits and 5 walks. They went just 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position. They probably could have scored a few more runs than they did in this one.
Absolutely. I mean, they had the bases loaded several times and didn't come away with more than 1 run. In the fourth inning, in the third inning, they came away with nothing, and then they loaded the bases in the ninth after Tim Tauer hit a home run and didn't score again. So they could have easily gotten to 6 or 7 or even 8 runs in this game with a couple of timely hits. But Geraldo Perdomo doing it again. A key home run kind of late in the game. Absolutely stepping up. Alec Thomas, 2 for 4 with an RBI, and Tim Tauer, who we're going to talk about a little bit later, hit his 5th home run of the year. And so they did enough, just like you said.
The bullpen in this one, Jack, was pretty good for the Diamondbacks. We saw Ryan Thompson in the 7th inning, Kevin Ginkel in the 8th, and then Shelby Miller, the new closer, pitched the 9th inning and was able to convert the save in pretty uneventful fashion. This feels like a little bit of deja vu here, Jack, with Thompson in the 7th, Ginkel in the 8th. Do we feel like Shelby Miller is the new Paul Sewald going back to 2023 and how that bullpen looked? Or I guess we're kind of just waiting to see how the team is going to approach that.
Yeah, I mean, with this team and with the way the front office looks at it and the way Torrey manages it, it's impossible to predict what they're going to do, whether they'll go with committee or they'll just hand it off to Shelby and let him run with it. Personally, I would like to see them make a decision. That's my guy. Let him go out there and try to save every game for a month. If he doesn't blow more than 2, you stick with them. That's kind of where I'm at. But, we'll see what they do, whether they go back to matchups or whatever. The fact that they brought up another lefty kind of helps a little bit in balancing things out so that they don't have to quite be so matchup oriented. So we'll see how that goes. One last point about the offense I wanted to bring up. They did a really great job, though, of working the count against Kodai Senga and got him out of the game after 4 innings, which was really key. They ran him up to 87 pitches through the first 4 innings. So even though they didn't get a lot of runs in the 3rd and 4th inning with the loaded bases, it really paid off in terms of removing one of the best pitchers in the game from the game.
Going back to the closer question, yes, this was only one save situation, so we don't really know for sure what the Diamondbacks are actually going to do now that Justin Martinez is on the injured list. We're going to talk about that more later. But I do think that Torey Lovullo likes his roles in the bullpen, right? It's not that the reason the Diamondbacks entered the season without defined roles at the very back end of the bullpen wasn't because Torey Lovullo is not a bullpen roles kind of guy. It was that they had 2 options who were both pretty good, and one of them was right-handed and one of them was left-handed. So the Diamondbacks decided to play the matchup game. In this situation, though, Jack, I don't think any of the top options for that closer role that they have are left-handed. I mean, Jalen Beeks has certainly pitched well this season, but I don't think he's going to be at the top of the list or in the top 2 for that closing job. So in my mind, because all of these options, I guess we're thinking about Shelby, we're thinking about Kevin Ginkel, maybe Ryan Thompson is in that mix as well. Because all those guys are right-handed, I don't really see a reason to go by committee, because what's the point of a committee if everyone is right-handed? And especially with Shelby in particular, we've talked about this before, because his primary outpitch is that splitter, he is a lot more platoon proof than most relievers. He's pretty good against lefties. So I think you feel pretty good about him no matter who he'd be facing.
I guess where I was thinking about that was specifically what you just mentioned, Shelby being so good against lefties with that splitter. If you're facing the Dodgers and you've got Ohtani and Friedman at the top of the order in the 8th inning, would he want to go to Shelby there as opposed to, say, Ginkel or Thompson? So that's where I was thinking the matchup game may still come into play, but who knows? I'm just guessing.
Well, we'll get into some other details from this game. We're going to talk about Justin Martinez, the Diamondbacks officially putting him on the injured list, as well as have a special guest join the show. Matt Gelb from The Athletic is going to hop on with me later on and preview the upcoming Phillies series. So all of that is coming up. But for the moment, we want to have just a quick word here from the guys over at Foul Territory.
If you want a razor that looks good, makes you look good, gets the shave done, and doesn't cost much.
Oh.
Is it nice?
That's a hairy John. And you can smell it too. Smell it, John. Smell it. Oh, wow. What is
After
that?
shave?
That's Harry's. That's the shave gel. I'm telling you, look. I mean,
you look scary, man.
It's the shot.
Fresh.
Now come in. Get this.
I don't want to touch this head anymore. Oh, my God.
That looks like German-engineered blades made in their own factory that stay sharp longer.
I'm using the razor, and it does not. You can start to feel when it gets dull. I mean, you guys only do here and up here.
True.
I'm doing acreage. Get the edge on your shave with Harry's. Normally their trial set is $10, but right now you can get it for just $6 at harrys.com/foul. That's our exclusive link, harrys.com/foul, for a $6 trial set.
Well, Jack, you mentioned it earlier, going on, looking at some of the offense numbers for the Diamondbacks in this game. Geraldo Perdomo, 2 for 4 with that homer that you referenced earlier. He also walked in this game, as he seems to do in every single game that he plays. Tim Tawa was also 1 for 3 with a homer and a walk in this game. And then Alek Thomas had some really good at-bats against Kodai Senga in particular. He went 2 for 4 with an RBI in this game. Continues to be a steady presence that I feel like we haven't really talked a ton about, Jack. Alek has not, he hasn't had a 900 OPS or a 1000 OPS like some of the other guys on the roster, but he's really been a steady presence. And at a time where Jake McCarthy has obviously struggled and ultimately got sent down, Alek Thomas has really stepped up and been kind of exactly what you hoped he would be.
He also made a really nice running catch today, kind of saved Zac in the second inning. That made a big difference as well. That ball was catchable, but it was a good play. So, doing it on both sides of the ball, hitting the ball better, hitting it sharper. One of his hits was a ground ball to the right side. If he was played a little bit differently, maybe it's another 4-3. But we're not taking anything away from Alek. It'll be interesting to see if he starts to get more playing time against left-handed pitching. That's going to be the next phase for him to push through if he's going to get almost everyday playing time.
We're going to jump in a couple minutes here into a conversation about the impending Ketel Marte roster move, which we sort of think is coming in advance of the Phillies series. And the Diamondbacks have a number of options of how they could approach that in terms of what they do with the roster, who are they sending out, or what is that going to look like. So we'll talk about that in a second. But before we get there, big news this morning, Jack, that Justin Martinez was officially placed on the 15-day IL with right shoulder inflammation. No surprises there after yet another outing last night where the stuff was as diminished as it was. We talked about it in our post-game show. It felt like the Diamondbacks didn't really have a choice, and Torey Lovullo told the guys in New York after last night's game that this was a possibility, having him hop on the injured list and then get some imaging and kind of go from there. The other piece of this, Jack, that we were probably less expecting was that AJ Puk was transferred from the 15-day IL to the 60-day IL, opening a 40-man roster spot for them. I'm not totally shocked by it, I guess. I know you were talking rough timelines last night, and I would have been pretty surprised if AJ Puk would return earlier than 60 days after he was originally put on the IL, but didn't necessarily expect to see them kind of cement him as not being eligible at this point to return before 60 days as soon as they did.
Yeah, as I outlined the likely throwing program that he would have to go through, figuring that would be at least a 3 to 4 week program anyway, plus 2 to 3 weeks. So it was going to be 40-something days, and it had already been down for 12. So you're already getting close to 60. So it just makes sense not to rush it, give him plenty of time. They're going to need him in the second half of the season. Whether or not he comes back a week or 10 days earlier, they needed a roster spot. So this was a wise move to make. With regards to Justin, real quickly, one thing that kind of struck me in some of the comments today that came out from the Diamondbacks was that the biggest reason they felt that Justin Martinez was okay was because he himself kept insisting that he was fine.
Right.
It kind of almost feels like leaving themselves some wiggle room. So if something does show up on the MRI, they can kind of say, well, I have to trust the athlete. And if the athlete insists he's fine, then what are we supposed to do? Because short of an MRI, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a trainer. I'm sure that there's lots of things that they can do and check and test short of an MRI. But at the end of the day, they do MRIs for a reason, because you can't really tell what's going on inside a complicated, compact muscle like the shoulder, with everything that's in the shoulder, without that kind of imaging. So, that's kind of where that is.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm sure the Diamondbacks did, their training staff, I'm sure, did their due diligence and did what they could to try to assess. But you're right. Ultimately, the MRI there's a reason we do these things, and it's really hard to have any definitive diagnosis on a situation like this without doing that. So no surprises. The D-backs are doing that. And here we are again, waiting for test results for a D-backs, a back-end reliever. We'll see how long it takes this time. It took a little while, of course, with AJ Puk. The other move the D-backs made today, Jack, was selecting left-handed reliever Jose Castillo from AAA Reno. We don't know necessarily how much Castillo will factor into the bullpen. I don't necessarily expect to see him in high leverage situations, but it is notable that he's another left-handed option for them alongside Jalen Beeks.
Absolutely. I think it's an important move. It was either going to have to be him or Kyle Backus. I think they really needed another left-hander. They were really getting into the red zone with Jalen Beeks' usage, and they need to back off that a little bit or a lot. So I happen to, but Castillo's got a great nickname, by the way. His nickname's Big Dude. He's just a big man. He's tall and he's a big bodied guy. And when he's healthy, when he's right, he's got some power stuff, fastball slider guy that can get out. So I'm really interested and excited to see what he can do. His first year in 2018, he was really effective. He just has never been healthy since then. So who knows how long he'll be able to stay healthy. But they really needed a left-hander, so I think this is a good move to give it a shot.
Hard to read much into numbers in AAA, but he's off to a pretty good start there. In 5 appearances, he went 5 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 1 run, no walks, 7 strikeouts. So, it's AAA hitters, but this is also the very, very hitter-friendly Pacific Coast League. So pretty impressive start. We'll see how things look for him. The other topic that we want to cover here before we get to our guest on this show, the Diamondbacks have a pretty difficult decision to make. If indeed Ketel Marte is going to be reinstated from the injured list on Friday, then they've got to figure out how to create that roster spot, Jack. And we mentioned it earlier, Tim Tawa homered in this game, and it hasn't all been great for him offensively, but it's been pretty good overall. Like he definitely has played well enough to where you feel like he deserves to be on this team. But he doesn't really have much of any shortstop experience at the professional level. And, the D-backs are very likely going to want to have another shortstop option on the roster beside Geraldo Perdomo. And that's where Garrett Hampson comes in. And you figure that it makes sense to keep him on the roster, even though he hasn't put up big numbers offensively. The other option that you and I were discussing before we hopped on the air, Jack, is the Diamondbacks could also send out an outfielder. They recently brought up Jorge Barrosa from AAA, and they could just send Barrosa back to AAA and operate with one fewer outfielder moving forward, knowing that Garrett Hampson can play in the outfield and Tim Tawa can play in the outfield as well. So there's a number of options here, Jack. I don't really know what to expect necessarily. Are you leaning in one particular direction?
So, mea culpa to anyone who follows me on X. During the game, I made a comment saying that may be Tim Tawa's last at-bat in the majors for a while. And maybe I've been overthinking it, worrying about the shortstop position. After all, the D-backs, like you said, they're going to want to have a backup shortstop capable player on the roster. And Tawa has only played 2 games at shortstop in his professional career. And that was in 2024 in Amarillo, none this year, none in spring training. So based on their past behavior, I'm thinking they're not going to do this. But John Gambadoro saw my tweet and responded to me and said, "Not so fast, my friend." My information tells me that he's going to probably, they haven't made a final decision, but he's probably going to stay. And Gambo's information on this kind of stuff is usually pretty darn good. So rethinking it, I think that if you put all the pieces together, probably sending Barrosa back down is more likely than the scenario that I had originally envisioned. That allows them, they still have Grichuk, they still have Hampson, they even still have Tawa, who's played plenty of outfield last year, that can, go out and play on the corners. Hampson can play some center field. I just mentioned Alec Thomas might get a few more reps against left-handed pitching to see how that goes. So none of that would surprise me at this point if that's the route that they go. Now, everyone wants Jordan Lawler up. And, we've had that conversation many times, and you can't never say never. You can't rule it out. I think he's hitting 381 as of right now. So we'll see what happens. But, I am duly chastened for my early speculation on how this is going to go down, and I probably was wrong.
Jorge Barrosa has had some positive moments offensively for the D-backs in his short stint, but the numbers there overall have not been great. He's 3 for 15 with a 521 OPS. Obviously a very, very small sample size in his major league career. He hasn't even had 40 plate appearances. So it's hard to really judge Barrosa at this point. It feels like he deserves to be at this level, at least at some point this year. But yeah, that would make some sense, right? I don't really think we're gonna see Jordan Lawler. I'm with you there, where that feels like the least likely outcome of all these things. Blaze Alexander is another name that we should mention as someone that the Diamondbacks conceivably could use in a situation like this. I guess that would be designating Hampson for assignment and sending down Tim Tawa and then bringing in Ketel and Blaze Alexander. Or I guess you could send Barrosa down and keep one of Hampson or Tawa, and then bring in Blaze Alexander that way. So there's all sorts of different combinations here that are possible, but I'm not really expecting to see Blaze at a time like this either. So yeah, there's a variety of options here. I think we've kind of covered all of the different options that the Diamondbacks have. And I think I'm leaning toward Barrosa being optioned is probably the most likely outcome here. It would result in Alek Thomas facing some lefties. As you said, the Diamondbacks face 2 tough lefties this weekend in Jesus Luzardo and Ranger Suarez. But at the same time, Tim Tawa's bat has proven to be valuable, and we know that Ketel is going to be on some sort of a return to play program. So, do you want those at bats primarily to be going to Tim Tawa or to Garrett Hampson? In a sense, you're kind of choosing between Tawa and having Alek Thomas face some lefties, or Hampson, and then you still have Barrosa up to face some of those lefties. So that's at least one way that you could view that specific decision. So yeah, I don't know. And anything else you want to add on this, Jack? There's a whole bunch of different things the D-backs could do here.
Just 2 comments. Back to Blaze for a minute, who we've kind of overlooked in this ongoing conversation. He is hitting really well. He's hitting with power and pop. He played some games in the outfield, had a highlight reel catch or 2 show up on Twitter. So, just for the Blaze fans out there, we've noticed what he's doing. He's playing really well. And so we certainly shouldn't be overlooking his possibilities. The second thing is if I had to guess if they're going to do this return to play protocol with Ketel, wouldn't surprise me if he just DHs his first 2 games, Friday and Sunday, takes Saturday off. That really wouldn't surprise me at all. That's about it. That's all I got to add on those.
I mean, and the Diamondbacks were already having Ketel DH before the injury on a fairly regular basis. So yeah, I 100% expect that to be a fairly regular thing for him, especially in these early stages he comes off the injured list. So yeah, this will be our last show for the week. So we'll see what happens and certainly talk more about it on Monday. But whatever it is, it's not going to be whoever gets sent down or whatever. I guess Garrett Hampson's the one player where you could actually lose him by designating him for assignment. But if Tim Tawa gets sent down, it's not like he can't play in the big leagues the rest of the year. Same situation with Barrosa. I'd expect we'd see both of those guys at some point later in the season. So yeah, we'll see what happens on that front. Certainly keep you all posted. But at this point in the show, I want to transition over to a conversation that I had earlier with Matt Gelb of The Athletic. The Diamondbacks, of course, are playing the Philadelphia Phillies this weekend. The Phillies will either come in 18-13 or 17-14. They are currently, as we record this, playing the Washington Nationals. So we'll see how that turns out. But obviously, the D-backs and Phillies have some history, and it was fun diving into that with Matt. So without further ado, here's that conversation with Matt Gelb. Well, we are very excited to be joined by the one and only Matt Gelb from The Athletic. He does an outstanding job covering the Phillies over there. He is also a co-host of the esteemed Phillies Therapy podcast alongside Paul Boyer. Matt, thanks for hopping on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward to the series this weekend.
I guess let's start with a little bit of history here, Matt, between these two teams. Obviously, it's been a while since the 2023 NLCS, but I imagine for Phillies fans in particular, they have not forgotten about what happened between the Diamondbacks and the Phillies back in 2023. And I wonder if maybe to some extent the players might still be kind of thinking about that when they play the Diamondbacks at this point.
I think the players are thinking less about it than the rest of the fan base is, and I think as we get further and further away from that NLCS, I think in this city, I think people have come to see it as like that was probably the Phillies' best chance. It wasn't. It's going to be their only chance to win a World Series. It was probably their best chance. Being up 2-0 in that series and being up 3-2 in that series, coming home, to play 2 home games, and Diamondbacks fans know how that all went. And I think there's definitely some bittersweet feelings still, but I don't think that that's in the clubhouse. I think honestly, a lot of those guys probably don't think about it that much anymore, and like that's just the nature of a professional athlete, and I understand that, but it's hard not to think of that NLCS whenever the Diamondbacks come to Philadelphia now, and I think those two teams are going to be linked for the foreseeable future because of what happened in that 7-game series.
What really stands out to me when I look at the Phillies roster now is that it really isn't all that different from the Phillies roster a year and a half ago in the NLCS. This is a team that really seems to have kind of embraced continuity to an extent. There's not been a whole lot of change here. I guess the big change over the offseason was probably Jesus Luzardo, which came to me as something of a surprise. I did not really think of starting pitching as being at the top of the Phillies list of needs over the offseason, but that's the direction that they went. Matt, what's your perspective just on the approach that this team has taken with, by and large, keeping this team together the last couple years?
I think some of it has been by design. I think some of it hasn't. I mean, they were looking to make, I think, some bigger changes this past offseason and didn't necessarily find the best avenue to do it. It was pretty widely reported, and it wasn't just rumors. I mean, they were shopping and open to trading Alec Boehm. They saw him as their best way to get something, a major league piece in return, and then also try to maybe free up some spots on the roster to do some different stuff. They didn't really find a great package. They found really that they valued Boehm, I think, more than the rest of the industry did, and maybe the rest of the industry was right because Boehm has not had a great start to this season, and we'll see. I mean, we're 1 month in, but they definitely value continuity of coaching staff, continuity in the front office, on the roster. They're the only team so far. They haven't made a single pitching transaction yet. They've only used 13 pitchers this season, which is crazy. And that's not because they don't want to make changes. It's just, they haven't had to. I mean, they haven't had injuries. They haven't had, a game where a starter only goes an inning and they have to use the entire bullpen, and then they have to bring up a guy from AAA. I mean, they really value steadiness, and that starts with the manager, Rob Thompson. And I think that can frustrate some fans here in Philadelphia because they're like, well, there's a few losses in a row, and they're like, well, why aren't they changing things? Why aren't they making roster moves? Why aren't they getting rid of a reliever who hasn't pitched well, et cetera, et cetera? And I think given where the Phillies have gotten the last few Octobers, the bigger picture to them is easier to see. I think at least from the inside the clubhouse and from the manager's office and from the front office, one bad month isn't going to sway what they do. And I think there are some fans who are frustrated that last year's exit in the NLDS did not prompt more change. As you mentioned, Luzardo was their biggest pickup. He's going to start in the first game of the Diamondback series. He's been outstanding. And it's like when people are like, oh, the Phillies ran it back. It's like they did, but also like the guy who's been their most valuable player so far this season wasn't on the team last year, Luzardo. He's been outstanding. He looks healthy, throwing hard. They gave him a new sweeping slider that has been a huge out pitch for him, especially against lefties. He looks like he fits in. There's, kind of curious to see. He's pitched for a lot of bad teams, small markets in his career. He's only 27 years old. I think we kind of forget that. Yeah. And what's been interesting to see is that he's really being in this environment, this atmosphere. with expectations on a contending team, it's almost brought out like a different level in him, and it's been kind of neat to see that because he's a reserved, sort of quiet guy, but when he's on the mound, he's a he's a pretty fiery guy, and his stuff has played huge so far. So, huge addition for them. And yeah, I mean they have questions up and down this roster. I think every team does probably right now, but it is a lot of the same guys, and certainly that'll raise some questions. Like, okay, they're a year older, they're 2 years older. Like, can they do this? Can they pull this off with this team? And that remains to be seen. But I think it's a pretty talented team.
You mentioned the fact that guys are a year older. I look up and down the roster, at least from a position player side, and Trey Turner's 32, Kyle Schwarber's 32, Bryce Harper's 32, Castellanos is 33, JT Realmuto's 34. Do you think there's some validity to wondering if this team is kind of aging out of really being a true contender? It doesn't feel like we're there yet, but maybe we're kind of getting close to that here.
I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're close. I think you're right. I mean, I think for this roster, this specific roster, this is their last chance. Now, that's not to say that if they don't win a World Series this year, that there's going to be massive changes up and down the roster. I don't think so, but I don't think they're bringing back the same roster. Real Muto and Schwarber are both free agents after this season. Schwarber has been, one of their, if not their best hitters all season. He's been on base every single game so far this season, hitting for power, drawing his walks. He's one of the best lefty sluggers in the sport, and so I'm very curious to see what happens with his contract situation. Even if the Phillies don't win it all in 2025, it would be hard not to bring Schwarber back. But then the counter to that is that, okay, well, they're getting older. Like, do you really want to invest in a long-term deal for another aging lefty DH? Is that something you want to do? And
yeah,
in a lot of ways, the Phillies are the antithesis of the Diamondbacks. Like, Diamondbacks are young, athletic. They're play good defense. They run, steal a lot of bags. Phillies are not necessarily that, and it is funny to see the contrast in the two teams, how they were built. Both teams are spending money, obviously, and so I don't want to say that they're like. People are like, "Oh, is the window closing? Is the Phillies window closing?" It's like this specific window with this specific roster. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think that they know that with this team, this is probably the last shot for this team. But I don't know that the Phillies aren't going to be contenders in 2026 or 2027, because I do think that they have pretty decent pieces in place, especially when it comes to the pitching side, and guys who are still on the other side of 30, and Christopher Sanchez and Jesus Luzardo and Andrew Painter, who's their best pitching prospect in 20 years, and he'll be in the majors sometime this summer. So I don't think the window is closing on them being a contender. I think the window is closing, though, on this specific team, this roster. Yeah, I definitely think that's true.
We're only, about 30 games into the season. You mentioned earlier, it's, the team isn't going to make any sweeping changes based on 1 month of performance. And I think just as an observer, it's difficult to kind of know what's real and what's not this early in the season. But from your perspective, Matt, what do you feel like you've learned about the Phillies so far in 2025, if anything, I guess? Maybe it's just too early to really draw any conclusions at all.
I think there's a couple things that stick out so far a month into the season. One is that in the Diamondback series in 2023, everyone's like, oh, the Phillies chased too much. They got themselves out. They were chasing pitches out of the zone. Diamondbacks really started to exploit them, especially in games 6 and 7. Phillies are chasing everything. Last year in the NLDS against the Mets, Phillies were chasing everything. Mets really threw a lot of pitches out of the zone, and the Phillies were swinging. They were aggressive. I think one of the things that has stuck out so far in 2025 is that as a whole, they have adopted a more patient approach, and it hasn't always led to runs being scored. The Phillies have struggled with runners in scoring position, but that to me matters less than them being on base a lot. They have a .336 team on base percentage right now, higher than last year. They have the best walk rate in baseball. Like they've gotten a lot of guys on base, and they've started to hit some home runs of late. They hit 3 home runs Wednesday night. Weather's starting to warm up. It seems like they're starting to hit for a little more power. They did not hit for power in April. I don't think that is something that would worry me. I think what I look at the overall trend is that, like, if they keep this patient approach and keep getting guys on base, they're going to score a lot of runs. Like, I mean, that's just kind of like how it works. And I think the guys at the top, Bryson Stott has been the leadoff hitter for most of the season now. Really seems like that role suits him well. Trey Turner has not hit for power yet, but he's been getting on base. And like up and down the lineup, I mean, there's guys you can poke a hole in every single guy right now in this lineup. It has not been perfect for sure, but I think that the more patient approach has been something that Phillies fans have been begging for. And it's interesting to me that, like, even as they haven't scored as many runs maybe as people want, it's like, well, they're making an adjustment that this lineup was exploited in the last 2 Octobers for being too aggressive. And the adjustment that they've made to be a little more patient, a little more balanced, I think that's really interesting. And if it is sustainable, it is something that could really help them. The other big takeaway for me is that they definitely have bullpen problems. I think, like, it's hard to say, like, how much do you read into April, right, Jesse? I mean, I'm sure you like do the same thing. You're like, what are you taking away from April? And I mean, it's such a long season, but they for sure have some bullpen issues. And Jose Alvarado has been, like, maybe one of the best relievers on the planet so far. The guy's throwing 100 with a 96 mile an hour cutter. He's almost unhittable. 21 strikeouts, 2 walks. But the rest of the bullpen, really shaky. Jordan Romano was a guy they signed to replace Jeff Hoffman, who's now thriving as the closer in Toronto. And excuse me, Romano just has not had it so far. I mean, like, his outings have been better of late, but I don't know. I mean, like, they're putting a lot on him because he's not only replacing Jeff Hoffman, but he's also replacing Carlos Estevez, who they traded for last summer. And, they were using Estevez as their closer, and then Hoffman was a setup guy. And they didn't get 2 more relievers. They only just got Romano on a 1-year deal. And so that put more of an onus on Orion Kerkering, who has not been good to start the season. He's the youngest guy in the team, just really up and down so far this season. So the bullpen's an issue, and I think that's something I need to figure out going forward.
It seems like the NL East is a narrative that is relevant not only to the Phillies, but also to the Diamondbacks to an extent. I think there's a pretty good chance the Diamondbacks are looking at trying to make the playoffs via the wild card again, and we all saw how that worked out for them last year. They won 89 games and still did not make the postseason. It is still early, as we've been saying, but what do you make of the Mets coming out playing the way that they have, and the Braves kind of struggling up to this point in the year?
It's interesting because the Phillies have seen both the Mets and the Braves so far. The Mets swept the Phillies last week in New York. The Phillies lost 2 out of 3 to the Braves in Atlanta earlier this season. Like, going into the season, the Braves were the odds-on favorite. And
right,
kind of understood it, right? Because Strider's coming back and Acuna is coming back, and the Braves, had so many injuries last year that you're like, okay, it can't be that bad again this year. And I thought about it, though, going into the season. Like, I wasn't sure if I had the Phillies as the favorite, but when I looked at it and said, the Phillies have the best pitching. They have the most pitching. They have the most pitching depth, I thought, going into the season out of those 3 teams. And so to me, that is always going to be what I look at, like, if you're trying to project a season. And
sure,
to me, everything is built around starting pitching. And so the Mets have surprised me simply because they've pitched unbelievably well so far. And obviously the Diamondbacks are seeing the Mets this week, and Mets have a strong lineup at the top, and obviously Juan Soto is there, and he got all the headlines. But I mean, what they've done with their pitching program is really interesting. They've taken some under the radar guys and made them into effective pitchers in the majors, at least in April. And so a month in, like, the dynamic of the East has changed quite a bit. I mean, the Braves got off to a horrible start. They've had a lot of pitching injuries. I don't know if it changes how much I view the division. Like, I still think the Braves are going to be right there. I don't think that they should be the favorite anymore. I guess the Mets are the favorite. The Mets remind me a lot of the Phillies from last April. I mean, the Phillies last April could not lose. And, like, that's the Mets right now almost. Like, they just can't lose. And they're getting crazy pitching performances up and down their roster. And the Phillies really used like that April and May last year to just sort of springboard them to coasting to the division title. I don't know if the Mets will do that again. I would say that the gap between the Mets and the Phillies looked pretty big last week when the Mets swept the Phillies, and most of the games were not competitive. So those are matchups, and I'm really curious to see how they evolve down the road. But I don't want to make it like such a cop out answer, but I mean, it really is like it's all about the attrition. It's like what team can just stay the healthiest, and so far that's been the Phillies. And I do think that gets rewarded over a 6-month stretch. The Mets have had some bullpen injuries of late. We'll see. I think that pitching depth is going to be important in this division, and right now I do think that the Phillies have the best depth there.
Speaking of the pitching matchups that we're expecting to see for the weekend, Jesus Luzardo against Merrill Kelly on Friday. The Saturday game, Aaron Nola against Brandon Pfaadt. And then on Sunday, Ranger Suarez against Eduardo Rodriguez. Diamondbacks have not officially announced their probables as of the time of this recording, but feel pretty confident with what they'll do on their side of things. Matt, I know you've already talked about Luzardo and the revelation that he has been for the Phillies early in the season, but what stands out about Aaron Nola and Ranger Suarez, and is there anything else you'd want to add about Luzardo?
I mean, specifically in this matchup, I mean, I think the Phillies are really happy that they have two lefties on the Diamondbacks this weekend. I'm sure you've discussed this, but I mean, the Diamondbacks left-right splits are stark. I mean, they're really extreme. So I think that was not an accident that the Phillies have two lefties starting in this series. They had actually this week, they were able to kind of rearrange their rotation. Suarez will be making his season debut, has not pitched yet this year. Had a back injury in spring training, and they've really slow played him. And I think they've been using this as a way to sort of manage his innings. He's probably not a 180 inning guy.
Sure.
He's never been that, but it's a big year for him. This is his free agent year. And so he is motivated. And I think everyone's kind of curious to see, what version of Suarez appears to start his season. I mean, it's funny because at this time last year, he was like the Cy Young favorite. I mean, and he hasn't pitched a game yet this year. So pretty crazy that they're just going to add this guy to the rotation, and he's like their fifth starter right now. So wild. So Nola has not been good, but he's coming off his best start of the year. He pitched Sunday night against the Cubs in Wrigley, a really good offense, and just looked like Aaron Nola, which he had not looked like Aaron Nola to begin this season. Lost his first 5 starts, had like a 6.5 ERA. Velocity was down, was not throwing strikes, just did not have the life on his pitches that we normally see. And in April's past, Nola has been a guy who does start slow, and you kind of almost have to defer to him because he has figured something out. I mean, he's pitched more innings than anyone else in the sport for the last like 7 years, and he is a guy who likes to pace himself, and he knows how much he can push himself, like when to push himself, and that's how he pitches 200 innings every year, which is remarkable in the sport right now. So he kind of is pacing himself, and I think though that there were some concerns because he was not getting away with the diminished stuff to begin this season. And I think a lot of things are working against him. They have scored like no runs of support for him when he's been pitching. So he's been pitching from behind, and he's been pitching from behind in the count. So I think Sunday was a big start for Nola, and now he's got a really good test against this Diamondbacks team. They crush righties. So very curious to see how his stuff plays this time around. Should be a little warmer. I think he thrives in the warmer weather. He's a Louisiana guy. So I think he'll be excited. I think he'll be excited about that. More than anything, he'll be excited to pitch with it's like 75 degrees outside.
To finish things off here, Matt, I want to talk about Bryce Harper just briefly. Harper, as I mentioned earlier, is 32 years old. He's not off to a great start by Bryce Harper standards, but you look at some of the underlying numbers there, I think he's probably going to be fine. He is in the 7th year of this very long contract that he signed with the Phillies. He is in his 14th season as a major leaguer. Do you see Bryce Harper right now as a lock to make the Hall of Fame? I'm not sure if that's I know we're far away from Bryce Harper probably getting to that point of actually retiring. But where do you view his status in terms of the Hall of Fame case right now?
Great question. I mean, I don't think I've really thought about his Hall of Fame case very much. I mean, I think like the test is always like if he didn't play another game ever again, like is he a Hall of Famer right now? Probably. I think that like by the end of his career, no doubt he's going to be a Hall of Famer. The one thing that's missing right now, he would say, is that he doesn't have a ring. He's got 2 MVPs. He's got Rookie of the Year. He's got a lot of Silver Sluggers. He's many All-Star games, et cetera, et cetera. But he doesn't have a ring, and I know that that's something that he very much wants, and I would say that it would boost his Hall of Fame case, no doubt. But we're talking about a guy who, because of when he debuted, he was 19. All these milestones he's gotten to. I mean, we forget. Like you just rattled off. He's 7th year with the Phillies. He's 14th year in the majors. He's 32, right? Like he doesn't even turn 33 until after this season, and you're like, holy cow! Like I mean, this guy is still has some prime years left, and even like post prime Harper, I think he's in a good spot because he's at first base now, and I think it's a position where he can age well into. I think that he's played a really strong first base. Like he's only been there for like parts of 2 seasons now. So I do think he'll be a Hall of Famer by the end of his career. I don't think there's any question. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer though right now. Like that'd be a really good debate to have. It's like, cause they're like Mike Trout. It's like if Mike Trout never played another game right now, he's a slam dunk Hall of Famer. Like there's no question about it. Like just the numbers that he put up, the awards that he won, etc. Harper, like I think he would be, but I think you could have a debate about him being like an instant Hall of Famer right now. I suspect he's going to get there.
Yeah, it's kind of a hypothetical that maybe doesn't have a ton of value because, as you said, he's 32 years old and he's not actually retiring anytime soon. But yeah, interesting.
He wants to play until he's like 42. He's like obsessed with it. He thinks that his body can do it. He's like very into like everything about keeping his body on the field like past age 40. Like he's obsessed with it. I'm serious.
Well, there you have it. Bryce Harper is about halfway through his career then. So we have a long way to go there still. Well, Matt, this has been great. Once again, Matt does a really great job covering the Phillies over on The Athletic. Even if you are not a Phillies fan, you're a Diamondbacks fan, totally worth reading anything and everything that Matt writes. Matt, thanks again for doing this. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. Can't wait to see the series. I'm excited to see these 2 teams.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Snakes Territory. If you haven't already, we'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to our channel here on YouTube, like this video, drop a comment down below. We love interacting with you in between our episodes. You can find us on social media as well. I am at Jesse N. Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. Thanks again so much for being with us today, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.